Well, hello everybody. We're so glad that we're able to connect with you, even though we are typically providing these financial seminars at restaurants. Um, Obviously, the restaurants are closed, so we try to do something a little different. And I will have to admit that I have some trouble handling the remote control on my TV at home, so I'm not the best with all this technology stuff, but we are going to do our best to work with the webinar system that we have here, and we look forward to providing you with some great information and three different ways that you can take back control of your financial future. You'll notice that there is a chat box on the right hand side, or there should be a chat box on the right hand side of your screen. And if at any point in time, if you have questions that you would like to have answered, you can go ahead and enter your question in the chat box. And Denise is here in the room with me. We're socially distanced so that we're remaining safe as well, as I know you all are, because you're in your homes as opposed to sitting in a restaurant somewhere. So just keep that in mind that the chat box will be there throughout. You can ask any questions that you may have. And just some technical things. We need to open, I need to open the presentation. So just bear with me a moment and we'll open that up. And then hopefully you'll be able to see me in a small screen and you'll be able to see the slides themselves. If you would kindly, somebody just type in the lower right part of your screen, there's a chat box. If you can type yes, that you can see the screen, that would be helpful, just to make sure that everybody can see that. All right, thanks, Kathy, Joe, Jeanette, thank you that you did that. So what you see there is our compliance screen, which we always have to put that up at the beginning of a seminar. In essence, we're duty bound to let you know that we are fiduciary financial advisors, for one. And for two, we are talking in general terms tonight. So we are not giving specific advice to you or your family with the information that we are sharing here this evening. We will offer you an opportunity to connect with us, and we'll provide a 15-minute complimentary consultation. And that'll pop up in the chat box from time to time. You'll be able to click on a link there and set a time for a phone call to have a chat with one of our advisors here at Massey & Associates, Inc. So we just wanted to get that technical part out of the way, and then we'll get to the topic at hand. So 3 ways to help you take back control of your financial future. So let's just jump right in. We're all gathered here because in the last few weeks, they've been unprecedented, from a global pandemic, sparking a historic market crash to government mandated stay-at-home orders. None of us could have anticipated 2020 would have rolled out the way that it is here. So many of us are feeling like this lady on the screen, like we're unsure of exactly what it is that we should be doing as we go forward. And if that's you sitting there right now, if you're wondering what to do, I want to let you know that you're not alone. Waking up every day to try to make sense of everything you see and hear can be completely daunting right now. And when it comes to your financial future, knowing the right moves to make can be even more puzzling. So before we even really get into the meat of today's presentation, I want to let you know about that 15-minute complimentary phone consultation, where that information should pop up here in the screen for us. So as we look at that, and I see Denise is walking around here taking a peek at my screen here. Okay. We've been flooded with lots of calls for advice over the past several weeks, and and what we're here to do is to provide some answers. So we want to do our best to offer you those consultations, which are complimentary, and certainly by the end of our presentation, we hope to have that calendar link up and live for you. All right. So as we move forward, what's going to happen during that consultation, a lot of people might be wondering. Well, it's really up to you. It's 15 minutes, so we'll ask you some questions. We'll listen a lot to see what your concerns are about the markets, about your 401ks, about your retirement planning, whatever you feel is important to ask in that 15 minutes. And then if together we agree that there might be some benefit or value for you to go a little deeper with us, then we can schedule another complimentary meeting that'll be a little longer, that we would like to do through a Zoom connection on computers, if at all possible. So we'll make sure that that information gets up there. I understand. I see we're getting notes here. Wendy, thank you. So let's take a look at where we're headed over the next 45 minutes or so that we have. Three main points on today's agenda. First, we want to take a look at where we are right now financially as a country, and of course, how we got there. Where could we go from here? None of us have a crystal ball, so we want to take a second look at where things could go from here, and we base that on some key indicators that we've been monitoring here at Massey and Associates. And finally, and most importantly, in my opinion, we want to look at what each of you can be doing right now to help take back complete control of your financial future, no matter what happens in the days and weeks ahead. I don't know about you, but it seems many people have grown pretty darn tired of things feeling out of their control. Whether it's being confined to their living rooms, kept from their jobs, or told when and where they can shop, people have grown increasingly frustrated, with being told what to do. So I'm excited to share with you some things you can be doing to grab the reins back when it comes to your financial situation. So where are we right now, financially speaking, and how did we get here? Without getting too into the weeds, I think it's important that with all that's happened, we take a kind of cliff note approach to summarizing how we got to where we are today. So when we look at it, the story began December 8 in a place called in China, Wuhan City, and that's where they determined that the virus started. And what happened, there were about 11 million people in Wuhan, and that's where it all started, and the virus spread very quickly. And then come March 9th, we had a very severe drop in the market, and we found that the impact of the virus hit here. And looking at this calendar, you say, well, March 9th, geez, that seems like a decade ago. It was actually just a few weeks ago where it all happened here in the United States. So investors were worried about the impact of the COVID-19. The stock market crash of 2020 began on Monday, March 9th. And then it had the largest single point drop in the history of the market. March 11th, the World Health Organization officially deemed the COVID-19 a global pandemic. And then the market experienced two more record-setting point drops on March 12 and March 16. So it was a one-day 13% drop on March 16th. Now that, of course, was unprecedented in the market. And then in the next 22 days, we experienced an over 30% drop in the market. Now, when we put that into perspective and look at the market historically, market corrections, how many times did we get market corrections of 30% or more? If you look back, it happened in 1934, 1931, and 1929. Now, those were all during what's called the Great Depression. So when we look at that and compare the Great Depression to where we are today, that's a little scary to have such a large drop. So, that's a snapshot of how we got here, but what else are we seeing, as we are looking at things moving forward in the market? Well, you don't have to look too far. We've all had a lot of time to see whether you're opening your email, turning on TV, scrolling through your phone. It's like every headline for the past few weeks has been about some type of impact the virus is having on our economy. And while we're certainly wise not to trust everything the media puts out, there are a few variables that serve as good barometers of things right now as we're trying to get a sense of what we should be doing. The first is the staggering number of people who have lost their jobs in this crisis. Real unemployment rates are now over 14%, with over 33 million Americans currently without a job. Now that's pretty significant. When you're over 14% unemployment, that's amazing. When you look at it, that's 1 out of 7 work-eligible people in the United States that no longer have a job. And that statistic has other ramifications. As those folks start to have trouble paying their mortgages, paying loans, the banking and lending industries are going to be in trouble. And then when we look at the hospitalities, hotel lobbies are probably going to look like this, totally empty or shut down. And they are expecting to lose $1.4 billion a week in the hospitality industry. And then we have the airline industry, and they've gotten a $50 billion bailout, but they expect that their losses globally could be over $250 billion this year. And then if we look at the retail industry, malls were closed, thankfully stores are starting to reopen, but um, it's still a mess when you look at what's going on in the retail industry with stores being limited as to how many people can come in, etc. Um, and then in the US alone, our retail industry is normally responsible for contributing roughly $2.6 trillion, or about 25%, to the annual gross domestic product, a number that will obviously be far behind as the so-called curve flattens out. So where can we go from here? Well, knowing where we are and how we got here, that's important. This is a question we've been fielding a lot lately, and it's really no wonder that this is on everyone's mind. So if you were to ask 5 different people, what might happen in the future, my guess is you'd likely get 5 different answers, because the truth is no one really knows what's going to happen. And frankly, anyone telling you that they do should probably seem a little suspicious to you right now. So rather than give you some best guess or pretend I have some psychic powers, which I don't, let's just look at some facts as we move forward. No surprise that we expect volatility. Um, and we're in an election year, which is kind of interesting. There's something called the Volatility Index, or it's termed the VIX, VIX, also known as a fear index as well, kind of in the industry. And it's a real-time market index that represents the market's expectation of 30-day forward-looking volatility. So what is the expected volatility as we're moving forward? That's what the VIX will tell us. Now, the index, as you see on the slides there, in non-election years, an average is like 19 on a scale up to 100, and max has hit 56% there. On election years, you see it's significantly higher at 23.2 versus the 82 maximum, which is a spike, obviously. Now, thankfully, when those spikes hit, they are usually short-lived. It's usually quick, and then it comes back down. Looking at the long-term averages is what's most important. So now, when we look as we go forward, March 27th, the second indicator to look at is actually another date. Anybody know what happened on that date? Maybe not. But if what happened was that the CARES Act was signed by President Trump, putting $2.2 trillion of stimulus money back into the economy. And while there's been some debate on exactly how those funds are being doled out, here's what's not up for debate. Those funds were essentially an emergency loan from the government. So the U.S. already had a $24.2 trillion national debt, and they increased it nearly 10% by adding that 2.2 in one swipe of the pen. Now, realistically, taxes will have to rise at some point in the future, and all of us are going to have to pay up. It's us taxpayers that will cover that bill to cover what was borrowed. While this may not have immediate implications for you, it's something we'll take a look at here in a couple of minutes as well. Now, the third indicator to keep in mind is unemployment. Now, unemployment is anticipated to continue growing from its current level of 14.7 to as high as potentially, here's a scary number, 32%, or 47 million Americans, according to a recent Forbes article. That's 7 percentage points higher than this country experienced in the Great Depression. That's how serious this unemployment problem is. And another way to look at that 47 million people, that's roughly the equivalent to all the residents in New York, Florida, and Colorado combined. That's a serious number of people that would be unemployed. Now, the fourth indicator to consider is the possibility of a recession. Now, most of us think we're probably there already. So when you look at it historically, a recession is determined by two quarters of a reducing values in unemployment, sales, income, industrial production, wholesale, retail sales. But now it's looked at a little differently if it's lasting more than a few months. So, given that definition being loosened up there a little bit, we think we're probably already there. Now, the final indicator to keep an eye on is what typically happens to interest rates during a recession. Now, when an economy enters a recession, demand for liquidity or access to money increases, but the actual supply of credit available from lenders tends to decrease, which often results in an increase in interest rates over time. Now, we don't feel as we'll see that in 2020 per se, but certainly in 2021, we are likely to see interest rates go back up, which they can't go down much further because the Feds have dropped their rates down to basically 0 to 1/4 of 1% for the funds overnight rate that you hear about them talking about with Powell. So, in summary, while none of us can predict the future with absolute certainty, we can, with high probability, anticipate that we'll continue volatility in the market. We can expect taxes to rise as the government needs to be paid back for what it just offered in stimulus money. And keep in mind, there's another stimulus package that the House has put forward that it looks like the Senate is kind of pushing back on, but that's another potential $3 trillion addition to our deficit. And many people think unemployment could continue to rise another 5 to 12%. So if we're not already in that recession, it is likely to be right around the corner. Now, let's look at our third and final question, the one that matters most, and that is, what can you do right now to help take back complete control of your financial future, regardless of what happens as we move forward? In a time in which so much feels outside your control, the reality is that your finances and the retirement you spent a lifetime preparing for doesn't have to be. Those things actually can be completely controlled. Now, here's a question for you. In times of crisis, um, think about this. When things happen, are you more the type that kind of freezes and panics and you kind of let things happen? Or are you more the type that kind of steps aside, you collect yourself, kind of think about it for a while and say, all right, here's a plan, and this is what we need to do as we're going forward. So hopefully you're the take action type, and hopefully that's how most of the folks are here on the webinar here with us tonight. Now, with everything going on and everyone's being fed by the media, which I think we'd all agree we can no longer really trust 100%. You can either sit at home frozen, waiting for things to happen, or you can choose to take some action. And hopefully most of us will be taking some sort of action as we move forward. So let's spend a few minutes together talking about 3 concrete actions you can take right now to not only help protect your financial future, but actually take advantage of the current circumstances. Because believe it or not, the current environment actually creates some key opportunities that you should be considering as we're rolling forward with the market. Now, the first concrete step you can take is to determine your continued exposure or level of risk with your investments in the market. We've already discussed that continued volatility is highly likely throughout the remainder of the year. Some of you may have been watching and seeing this already. There have been days in which the market has actually had nice little pickups, and other days not so much, and then other days where it seems to be doing well, and then right at the end of the market takes it all away and it ends up flat or slightly down. So given that roller coaster, it's important that you know what portion of your retirement assets are still exposed to market loss. Now, you might recognize the gentleman on the screen there, Warren Buffett. For like the last 50 years, he's run Berkshire Hathaway, and he owns companies like Geico, Duracell, Helzberg Diamonds, Pampered Chef, just to name a few. One of the most famous investors alive, and he's worth about $74 billion. And now what does he say about risk and investing in the market? Well, rule number 1 is never lose money, and rule number 2 is to never forget rule number 1. Now, in March, when the Dow dropped that big 13%, and then it continued on with 30% the weeks that followed, we had taken action and went into a more defensive position to help alleviate some volatility. We notified clients as to why we were making portfolio changes to our investment portfolios, and to remind them of the plans that we put in place to help them prepare for times just like these. We have a bias towards asset preservation. So when we make recommendations to the folks that are considering working with us, we always lean towards that asset preservation, and we have a bias towards preserving money. The sad things that we were hearing when we were reaching out to clients were things like, our neighbors said they were down 27%, or my sister just called and their advisor hasn't been in touch or hasn't done any type of stock market adjustments at all to their particular portfolio. So they seemed a little frustrated. Times like these is where you should be over communicated with, not times you should be chasing someone to get answers. And in times like these, the greatest gift you can have is often clarity. If you're looking at your accounts and trying to determine on your own exactly where you stand, or even exactly how much you still have at risk, I want you to listen very closely to what I'm about to say. Because one of the most misunderstood aspects of investing is what it takes to recover from a loss that you would incur. And in talking with folks every week, many of them are surprised to see how much exposure they actually have in the market. So let's take a look at why that matters so much. So here's a hypothetical example. Let's say you've got a million in the market. Whether you have a million, 100, the million's an easy number to work with because it rounds the numbers off nicely. If there's a 50% market decline, well, you have 50,000 remaining. So then with the 50,000, if you have another 50% market gain, where do you stand? Well, that puts you at 750. Because a lot of people think, well, if I go down 50, if I go up 50, I'm back to where I was. That's not the case at all. As you can see, that's pretty simple math that we have there. You have now a $750,000 balance. So when you look at that, pretty easy to see that with a 50% drop in the market, you technically need a 100% market gain to get yourself back up to your $1 million balance. So that is pretty significant. So with a 30% drop in the market, you actually need a 42.9% increase in the market to get yourself back to zero. Now think about that if you were back in math class when you took a negative 30 and a positive 42.9 to equal zero. How many would come up with that number being correct if they were in math class? That's not how that works. So action number one is we'd like to offer a risk analysis totally free of charge. So that's the first concrete action you can take. Again, not uncommon for us to meet with folks who are either in retirement or just a few years of retiring, who still have 60, 70, 75% of their assets too exposed to market risk. And what would our buddy Warren Buffett say about that? Well, here's kind of an interesting quote that he often repeats. You never know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Now, what he means by that is you don't realize just how much risk you have in your portfolio until the market goes down. And another great quote that he has is, it's insane to risk what you have for something you don't need. Now, what does he mean by that? Simply, if you can live on, and let me give you an example. It's probably easier this way. Met with somebody, had a very large account, been working at the same very large company since he was a youngster. He's now ready to retire. He had $1 million. The market dropped that down to 800. And as we were going through his portfolio and we shared the risk that he had in his portfolio, we had determined that with 800,000 plus his Social Security, he could easily handle his lifestyle expenses for retirement. So since he could retire with the 800 he had remaining, he didn't have to take excessive risk to try to gain back up to the $1 million. And that's the point that Warren Buffett is trying to tell us here. So if you don't need to take that higher level of risk, why should you? And that's a simple thing, a point to be made there. So to get your completely free risk analysis, and let me defer here for a second. Were we able to get that link? Okay, can we put that in here? Okay. I don't see it yet. Denise is telling me she's resolved the issue about the calendar link, and we should hopefully see that popping up here momentarily. Now, so if you'd like to receive a complimentary risk analysis from us, you can just go on to that link. Let me see if I can find it here. I won't see it. Okay, is that so? One of the attendees, would you kindly tell me, can you see a link anywhere in there? The link is up. Thank you for that. That was very helpful. Now, because apparently I can't see it where I am, but as long as you can see it on your end, take advantage of that link. So you can click on that and you can schedule a time to meet with us to discuss your particular situation and the level of risk that you might have. And all too often, as the advisory team here meets with prospective clients, we see that they have way too much risk in their portfolio as they're getting closer to retirement. It's just not a good place for you to be. Now, Action two would be minimizing future taxes wherever you can. And when we look at it, anytime we bring up taxes, oftentimes, we see people just kind of roll their eyes. So it's important to keep a lookout for taxes, though. And we work with CPAs, and we love CPAs because they do great work. And we're not CPAs here, but we have two certified financial planner professionals and a third advisor that was scheduled to take her test to become a CFP in July, but they have postponed that exam. So now she'll be sitting for that exam in November, I believe. So then we hope to have three certified financial planners here on the team. So you have a very highly experienced team working on your behalf. Now, the danger sometimes with CPAs is some people think that they do tax planning, where many of them don't. Many of them, like this gentleman here, are more historians. They're looking, what happened last year? What was your income last year? What were your deductions last year? So it's interesting, and I just read this recently. I forgot where I got it from, but it said, we say we do our tax returns. And why are we doing that? Well, we've already paid our taxes in, so we're trying to figure out how much the IRS is going to return back to us. And that's why they're called tax returns. So I thought that was kind of a cute way to look at that, as opposed to just filing our income tax form. Now, when we look at it, um, with the tax environment, if you would vote for me there in the chat box, do you think taxes are going up in the future or going to go down? So let's just take a pause. And if you would just type up or down in the chat box, I just want to kind of take a little poll there to see how many people up, 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 up. Okay, I guess I guess it's 100%. Everybody that's here on the webinar is expecting that they will be going up. And we certainly feel that way as well. And when we do ultimately end up getting together, we'll show you a very simple way to look at taxes, and we show people how they can improve their tax situation as they go forward. Now, here's a simple thing that should be considered. And let me mention, even though I'm going to talk about this right now, please don't just go out and do this. Meet with a professional first before you actually do what I'm going to talk about next, which is potentially think about converting from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. Now, you might know clearly what the difference is between a traditional and a Roth, but a lot of people might not be so up to date as to the differences. But in simple terms, a traditional IRA, you're putting in pre-tax dollars, gross tax deferred, and then you pay taxes when you take the money out in the future. Well, a Roth IRA, you pay taxes on your contributions currently, it grows tax deferred, and then it comes out tax free. So in a simple like farmer analogy, you could either pay tax on the seed or you can pay tax on the harvest, whichever you prefer. Now, obviously, the seed is going to be a lot smaller than the harvest. So when you look at it and you wrap that around how the taxes are so much lower today than they are going to be in the future. And let me clarify that. I talked earlier about taxes going up. Everybody agrees they're going up. They're already scheduled to go up January 1st of 2026 because in 2015, the Trump tax plan was put into play. So starting in 2017, it was voted on. Started in 2018, it will revert back to 2017's tax brackets. Now, the first bracket didn't change, but the next bracket is going to have a 25% increase. The next bracket is 13.6% increase. The next bracket is 16.6% increase. And keep in mind, all of those increases were before this extra stimulus was just sent out, before the extra $3 trillion stimulus that's being considered might be coming out. So you can imagine just what the taxes might look like in the future. And although that might be scary, please, like I said, don't just go out and do a Roth conversion without speaking with a professional. You can give us a call. We'll have that link where you could go and schedule a 15-minute call. We'd be happy to chat with you about that. So let's talk a little bit more about the conversions. It's simply a transfer of your retirement assets from a traditional IRA into a Roth IRA. Of course, you would owe taxes on that conversion when you do your tax forms for that year. So now, traditionals and Roths have been around for a long time, and you might have even entertained doing a conversion before because of taxes. But now I think is a time when you should take a real serious look at it. And here's a good example. If you look at, let's say you had a $100,000 traditional IRA, and you were thinking about doing a Roth conversion, and you would end up paying, say you're in the 24% bracket. So you'd pay $24,000, pretty straightforward. But if the market takes away some value and brings that down to $70,000, and you like those holdings, those investments that you have, and you're optimistic that they'll come back in the future, well, if you convert to a Roth IRA, look at the difference in the tax bill. It's dropping down to just $16,800 instead of $24,000. Well, that's a significant saving in taxes, and you can do a Roth IRA conversion and keep the very same investments that you currently have. And I think that's an important aspect of a Roth conversion. So as we look at it, Roth conversions, we like to talk about them, and if you'd like to see exactly what you could be saving in the long run by converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, well, you can schedule one of those 15-minute phone calls, and we will show you the difference between keeping your money in a qualified account or converting to a Roth account. Okay, and we can quantify that by actual dollars. What is important here is for us to understand what your current tax bracket is, because that's how we do all the calculations to show you what the benefit would be by converting to a Roth IRA. Now, let's look at this. We often talk about your financial house like we talk about building a physical house. Now, some of you on the call might have actually built a house. Now, we all want to talk about the fancy, nice things, the good parts on the inside, like the granite countertops, that beautiful master bath that you want, the super duper walk-in closet with enough shelves for all the shoes that you've built up over the years, right? But it's all based on the quality of the foundation. Now, foundations are not real exciting to look at, let's face it. But without a good foundation, you cannot build a solid house. And the same thing goes for your foundation in your retirement. Now, the foundation in retirement is actually your income, or replacing that paycheck that you give up once you decide to go into your retirement years. And the worst thing that can happen is that you're going down the road and you see that you have a crack in your foundation, or a crack in your income plan, if you will. So let's just pause here for a second and just think about this. If you've been working with an advisor for a while, have they provided you with a written retirement income plan? Some of you may be thinking back to your annual review, or you may be thinking about the stack of statements that you get. Look, that is not a financial plan. It's not just a stack of statements. It's knowing when your income will start, and is it going to increase in the future? Do you have other investments set aside to grow for the future, for future expenses, especially those unexpected expenses like a health event, where you might have a hospital stay, a major surgery, end up in a long-term care situation or something like that. No, your plan should be simple. And think about it. When if you had kids and you had a house, they were always encouraged, and they were encouraged from their schools to come home and talk about an escape plan if there was a fire in the house. Now, is that going to be a complicated plan like something from NASA? 200 pages? No, it's going to be simple. It's going to say, look, it's real simple. If there's a fire in the house, you go down this hallway, go down the stairs. Or if you can't go there, go out this window, and we're going to meet at the end of the driveway. It's very simple. And that's how your retirement plan should be as well. So when you look at it, a true retirement plan should be just a few pages, simple English, so that it's easy to understand, and should address 5 questions. Number one, it should tell you exactly when the paychecks you create for yourself in retirement will begin and which pocket of money you'll be tapping into. It should also tell you in what order you'll tap into those pockets or buckets of money, because that's very important as well. Thirdly, a good retirement income plan won't just stay static, because the cost of goods don't stay static either. It will need to continue to grow over time. And fourth, it should have built-in provisions for what should happen if you or your spouse, if you're married, should become incapacitated or need long-term care, because that's a big issue. And finally, this is perhaps the greatest question we can help you address. It should mathematically show you exactly how long your money would last, regardless of what happens with market crashes and global pandemics. Now, if this is you thinking, you're thinking, well, if this type of a plan has been available, then why don't I already have one of these? And why don't I fully understand my plan or have this kind of reassurance? If that's you, I have two pieces of encouragement as we try to wrap up here today. First, you're not alone. Believe it or not, the vast majority of those that we visit with week in, week out, have been working with a financial advisor for years without ever having a true written retirement income plan, where they know exactly where the money's coming from, exactly how long it's going to pay them, and if they're married, is it going to pay for both or just for one of them? And we see this lack of planning all the time. So don't for a second think you're the odd person out. This is very common. And second, it's not your fault. That's the bottom line, because your advisor should be doing that for you. And as we review people's portfolios, we hear all types of feedback about advisors. Generally, what we hear is, oh, they're very nice, but then they're leaving a lot of things unaddressed for their clients, and that's the unfortunate part. We know at some point in most people's lives, not knowing exactly how investing and planning for retirement works, you made a brave and bold decision. You likely did too. You picked up the phone, you called somebody, so you were working with somebody, but nobody's really created that written income plan for you. And that part is not your fault. Truth of the matter is, you did your part. Candidly, many advisors just don't specialize in retirement income planning like we do here at Massey Associates Inc. Doesn't make them bad advisors. Like I said, most of the people that we work with had been working with other advisors, and they liked them. They thought they were nice. They just weren't getting what they felt they really needed, and that was a plan that they could depend on for the rest of their lives. So, our third and final action item for you is to get a written retirement income plan, because we think it's so important. Survey after survey tell us the number one concern for people approaching retirement or already in retirement is income. They fear running out of income more than death itself. Kind of an interesting survey, but we see that over and over and over again. So this plan does all 5 of the things we've covered in a few short pages, and best of all, it's easy to read in layman's terms that you can easily understand. Now, what does it mean to you? It means you can finally put that big concern that you have, which is, for most people, do I have enough to retire on? And the irony, whether people have 200,000 or 2 million plus, it is the same concern. And we find that kind of interesting. Regardless of the level of wealth, everybody has the same concern. So we'll have tested mathematically for you, ensured in writing, how long that money will last and how that plan will lay out for you. So take advantage of that opportunity to schedule a phone call. And then, you know what? Just go out and do something fun. Connect with your family. You know, if you haven't watched all the Netflix movies already, well, you could always try another one maybe. Or when you look at it, maybe you've had enough of TV. Just turn off the tube for a while. Get outside, get a breath of fresh air, take a walk, enjoy yourself, grab a coffee, grab a glass of wine, whichever you prefer, and just kind of like take a breath. You know, enjoy your family, enjoy the time that you can spend with each other during this, you know, shutdown that we've all lived through here. And then hopefully soon enough we'll be barbecuing together for the 4th of July, and who knows, maybe the Rolling Stones will be able to finish their tour and the ballparks will be open and life will get to be a lot more sensible for all of us here in the beautiful ocean state that we have. So we are here to help. We have a passion to help people with their retirement planning. Income planning is number one. Retirement investment planning is the other big category we work on. And then income tax mitigation. We've been working on this for years, even before the new stimulus money is making the problem even worse. So it's so important for you to just take some action. We'll help you with those three areas. Also, we work and help with Medicare supplement plans and legacy planning as well. And legacy, it doesn't mean from you down to your children. Legacy starts with how you leave your spouse. The big concern there is income often drops when one spouse dies, and tax brackets actually go up. And a lot of people don't pay attention to taxes. When we review taxes in our physical seminars, we ask people how many have heard or are aware of taxes going up in 2026. We have never had a hand go up. So it's important that you pay attention to that. So we are here to help. We have a question here. Can I contribute my 72T distribution with a Roth conversion? Okay, that's a great question. First, let me just mention what a 72T is for everybody else that might not be aware. It's a rule that allows you to distribute from your IRA accounts or 401k type retirement plan prior to age 59 and a half without getting hit with a 10% penalty. Now, there are some temporary rules in place due to the CARES Act that allows people to withdraw from their 401k if they have lost their job due to the COVID outbreak without that 10% penalty. It also allows loans at a much higher level where you could borrow up to 100,000 or 100% of your account. You can actually borrow, where in the past it was up to 50,000 and 50% of your account. Now, if you're getting those distributions, um, that has to count as taxable income. So it's a very technical question you're asking there, Don. I will research that. I believe we have your email address, and I will get you that answer directly, and we'll get you that answer tomorrow, and we'll email that out to you. So that's a great question, a very unusual question. Are there any other questions that anybody would have at this point? Denise, do you see any questions? I don't see it. All right, since there are no additional questions, we just want to thank you for your time and hanging in there with us. And hopefully you got some real benefit from the time that we shared here together. And we look forward to meeting with you on the phone or perhaps through a Zoom so that we can help you and your family with your retirement planning. So that's all for now. Take care and stay safe.